Thank you, thank you.
I'd like to call this meeting to order. Welcome everyone to the Zebulon Board of Commissioners meeting for 6/6/22. We will start with the Pledge of Allegiance led by Commissioner Jessica Harrison.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Before we approve the agenda, there are some items that we need to amend as far as special recognition for the school of recognition for Chief Perry to recognize the Junior Firefighters Program. And
Will that be under number 2 or a separate
Number 3.
recognition there?
under for Chief Perry's recognition,
It would be under right after school recognitions.
right after school recognition, okay? Are there any other amendments to the agenda?
Yes, Mayor. I'd like to pull from consent the minutes from May 25th, 2022, May 26th, 2022, Ordinance 2022-52, Resolution 2022-20, please. Oh, and I'm so sorry. 2022-49.
Okay, and these will be placed under new business D. Should they be named individually or just put them all under D?
I mean, we can do them individually is fine, but I mean, you don't have to name them now.
Okay. Are there any other amendments?
I'd like to pull Ordinance 2022-46, Police and Fire Off-Duty Employment Reimbursement.
I'm sorry, what was that, sir?
That would be Ordinance 2022-46, Police and Fire Off-Duty Employment Reimbursement.
Oh, yes, sir.
Okay,
Next, Police Quarterly Report, please.
Where's that at?
which one?
Oh, under C, general.
And then Renewal of Fire Contract with Wake County. Also, Ordinance 2022-50, Play Zebulun Implementation, Soccer Field, GSK Property. Also, Resolution 2022-20, Downtown Concert Series, Street Closure.
Oh, I pulled that already.
It's already,
Thank you.
it's already voted.
Thank you.
Okay, all these will be placed under D also. Any other movements to the agenda? Do we have a motion?
I move to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
Any discussion? So moved. Next,
I think you need to call for a vote.
we'll do a roll call, starting with Commissioner Laux.
Approved.
Deny.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you guys, so if you'll speak
Deny.
up.
Okay.
Commissioner Clark, please.
Clark.
I deny.
Miles.
Approved.
Approve.
Motion passes 3-2. School recognition. I'll come down. Carson Porter. Is he here?
Yes, there it is.
This is our student, Carson Porter. The town of Zebulon recognizes Carson Porter. Zebulon Elementary School is being an outstanding student. He is an inspiration to his teachers and administrators and peers each and every day. Carson comes to school each day determined to maximize every minute of his instructions. The magnet theme of the Zebulon Elementary is gifted and talented, meaning we value the gifts and the talents of our students and work to nurture and value those gifts and talents. Carson exemplifies the gifted and talented theme. He is active in the orchestra where he plays the violin, and his favorite elective is physical education. He is excited to be challenged by his teachers, and he pushes himself to be the best student possible. Carson receives 5th grade math instructions despite being in the 4th grade, displaying yet another of Carson's talents. This is signed today, June 6, 2022, by the Mayor, Glenn L. York. Next, we recognize Zebulon Elementary School teacher, Robin Rambo. Robin is the glue that holds the school together. She is always willing to help and support other teachers. She wears so many hats at our school. One of these is the school improvement team facilitator. This is a difficult role, but she has such a growth mindset. When she sees a problem, she immediately begins to work and solve it. She thinks about the whole child, not just his or her academics. She concerns herself with the social, emotional health of the student and is an advocate for strong parent engagement. She works to create equality within our school for all students and staff. We love and appreciate everything Robin does to keep our school running smoothly. The town of Zebulon recognizes Robin Rambo, Zebulon Elementary School, for her dedication to the school and its students. She works to create equity within the school for all students and staff. We love and appreciate everything Robin does to keep our school running smoothly. This is for June 6, 2022, signed by the Mayor, Glenn L. York. And we will get this to her. Special recognitions.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the board. In June 2016, we started a junior firefighter program for our youth ages 14 to 19. Our program was intended to have a positive impact on kids through involving them in public service, while maybe even just giving them a little head start on a future public safety career. Tonight, we celebrate our program's 5th anniversary. We recall how we started with just 6 eager young men to when one young lady showed up to be the first female in our group, to a time now where we have a group of 20 diverse kids. Over 36 young people have been through our program in our 5-year history, including 8 who are currently volunteer firefighters with our department and some who are already career public safety professionals. Tonight, some of our current junior firefighters and others who have completed the program have come tonight. We offer thanks. Thanks to our board, who has supported our program and made it possible and champions these young people at every chance. Thanks to our fire department members who take time to work with these young people and to be positive impact. Thanks to Lieutenant Zach McLeod. Stand up, Zach, please. Zach's been this group's leader since day one. He's been their advisor, their coordinator, their coach, their mentor, and probably about any other hat they'd let him wear. So thank you, Zach, for your work with the group. Thanks to the parents who supported their kids every month and trusted us to keep them safe in the process. And last but not least, thanks to these junior firefighters, both past and present, who have come and participated, making our program so successful. On April 30th, 2022, some of our junior members represented their group, our department, and our community at the Warren County Junior Firefighter Competition. This is the largest competition of this type in the state of North Carolina. We congratulate all who participated and placed very well in every event, but more specifically, they brought home the second place trophy in the zigzag, attack and drag. But more importantly, we thank them for honorably representing this community as they provided exemplary sportsmanship and teamwork throughout the day. I'd like our current juniors to stand. This is a representative group of them. Some couldn't make it, but group on the front row, stand up for us tonight. I'll offer them a round of applause. The group right behind them, if you guys will stand as well. The group right behind them are all current volunteer firefighters within our department who serve today as your volunteer firefighters, but they got their start in our junior program. So they're an example of the fruits of our labor, if you will. And like the front group, all of them couldn't be here tonight. Some of our, we'll call them graduated juniors, are at work protecting the communities they work in. So that's a testament as well. So I'd like to thank them and thank you for your support of our junior program.
Thank you, Chief. Now's the time for our public comment on any topic other than the budget. Do we have anyone to speak?
You have the list before you.
We have Tracy Alford, Sarah Beth Howard, Honey Wiggs, and Virginia Johnson.
Can you call them up one at a time, please?
Yes, Tracy Alford.
Honey, Tracy.
Hello, Mayor and Commissioners and our town officials and staff. It is so wonderful to get to see you on this occasion, and we are prepping for Miss North Carolina once again. And we have had two wonderful representatives. We've had our Miss Zebulon's outstanding team, Kerrigan Brown, and Sarah Beth Howard, our Miss Zebulon, that will be representing us very soon, in a week and a half, in High Point. And I'll let Sarah Beth tell you more about that when she speaks. But I wanted to let you know that we have heard you. The Miss Zebulon organization has heard we want the pageant back in Zebulon. So I wanted to let you all know that we are working with some organizations and with some individuals to bring it back to Zebulon this year. So you will be getting more information coming in more of a formal request on that in the coming months. So be on the lookout for that. Also, we have been discussing a proclamation for the town of Zebulon for a kindness day in honor of Kerrigan's platform, Kind is Cool. She would like to encourage our citizens to do acts of kindness for that day, and she will also be doing social media posts for some ideas for our citizens to do acts of kindness that day. And she will also be in town that day doing them herself. So our Acts of Kindness Day for the town of Zebulon, we would like to request for it to be June the 14th. And that is all I have. I'll turn it over to our Miss Zebulon, Sarah Beth Howard.
Hi everyone. Well, as Ms. Tracy said, I'm so excited in the next few weeks here to be representing town-friendly people in High Point, North Carolina at the Miss North Carolina competition. A big part of the Miss America organization is the Social Impact Initiative. Every single candidate has their own personal social cause they care about. And for me, I am born and raised in Wilmington, North Carolina, and am no stranger to hurricanes and the importance of hurricane safety as someone who lived through Hurricane Florence. And what I wanted to talk about today is just some reminders for how a local government can be prepared, especially as we enter hurricane season. So first and foremost is sufficient communication with emergency staff, volunteers, and community members. You know, where are the shelters? Who can come to the shelters? Are pets allowed? And all these are important questions that people are asking, and that kind of communication is so crucial in the safety. Additionally, updated infrastructure really is necessary, and what that looks like is having contracts in place for debris removal. Emergency services can't get through if there are trees blocking the road, and that unfortunately can lead to a loss of lives. Other things that are important are modernizations of older buildings, so making sure that those are up to code. Is the code adequate? And the update and upkeep of drainage systems, and that was something that ended up being really crucial following Hurricane Florence in my hometown of Wilmington, and has really alleviated a lot of flooding and a lot of issues in our town. And I know preparedness can sound kind of redundant, especially in a time where we're not worried about a hurricane. We've had a great few days of weather, but redundancy really is everything. I wanted to highlight in Brunswick County, a dam in Boiling Springs Lake was left in disrepair, and what originally was an $18 million repair after Hurricane Florence ended up being a $30 million repair that taxpayers had to make up for. And so really, it's not just a humanitarian issue, it's not just an individual issue, but it is a financial issue. And it's something that's really important, and I would love to have more opportunities to advocate for that right here in Zebulon. So thank you all for giving me the time to speak today.
Thank you. And June 14th, as far as a proclamation, I don't think the board will have a problem with that from the town. Making June 14th Kindness Day.
A motion's not necessary. I think he's just asking for consensus.
I agree with
Yeah,
that.
just a consensus.
I agree.
Concur.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Next, Honey Weeks.
Good evening, Mayor and Board. I'm so glad to be here this evening, and all of you guests. I, first of all, just wanted to come on behalf of the Zebulun Rotary Club. I am the president of the Zebulun Rotary Club, and I wanted to say thank you so much for allowing us to have the Flags for Heroes on display in the driveway. Tons of wonderful comments about the display of flags. We have been able, with this fundraiser, to raise over $4,500, which are funds that go back out into the community. So we are very grateful for the partnership. We are very grateful for Chris and his team that have helped us out as well. So much gratitude and thank you very much. Another thing that I wanted to mention on behalf of the Rotary Club is a partnership that we are doing with the Carolina Mudcats. We will be hosting something called Connect with a Cat. And we are inviting community members to kind of adopt a player, one of players to just encourage them throughout the rest of the season, and we will have a wonderful cookout together with them in August as the season ends. So that is what is on the plate right now for the Zebulun Rotary Club, and again, just wanted to come to you and say thank you and bring you up to date on what we have going on.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, Virginia Johnson.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak this evening in considerations of expanding alcohol consumption areas in the downtown district. I support strategies that help businesses thrive and promote vibrant downtowns. As thoughts on expanding alcohol consumption areas are discussed, I want to share a few thoughts I'd like to have considered as you move forward. Number one is when you're outside, once outside establishment doors, it's much more difficult to monitor who is consuming beverages. And what type of strategies can you have in place to help prevent underage drinking? Can we have additional training for staff? And then who is responsible for underage drinking that may occur in those areas? And then it's also more difficult to monitor and prevent overconsumption. So who pays for the expenses associated with increased alcohol consumption? Are there things that we can put in place to encourage, like incorporate more, promote safe rides home? Are there other strategies like that we could possibly do? And then who pays, and also who and how will we fund management and enforcement of these areas? One other thing to consider is, are there limitations on days and hours and types of beverages that can be consumed outside of an establishment? And the last area just to kind of think about is, the other thought is to consider just the inequality that can sometimes be brought into the inequality of creative circumstances where in one district, someone can legally and openly drink a cocktail or a beverage, and then 2 blocks down the road, they could actually be arrested for illegally drinking a beverage outside. And so just thinking about how can these areas be supported, or can we think about those as we're moving forward with these plans. But again, I strongly support everything that brings people downtown, and just really encourage you again to consider these thoughts as you move forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, I have 2 people who submitted comments that I would like to read. The first is from Mary Reconu. I'm assuming I'm pronouncing that right, Reconnu. I am writing concerning the vote tomorrow night for the alcohol ordinance. I am 100% in agreement with allowing alcohol both in the alley and on the sidewalks. We cannot continue to suffocate Zebulun. The town is growing, whether people like it or not. With that growth, we need to make smart decisions regarding what truly affects our town. I don't believe that allowing alcohol will be a hindrance. The fall line, I'm sure, invested in that area thinking that open space would be a great benefit. Folks can dine out in the alley and have an adult beverage. I have yet to go to the fall line personally. However, I can see the potential and where this ordinance can go. Just look at Oxford and what it has done for their town. I hope that you can see how this benefits Zebulun. Thank you for your time. Mary Reconu. The next letter is written from the Chamber of Commerce by Brandon McCraney. Dear Commissioners, on behalf of the town Zebulun Chamber of Commerce business community, we fully support and urge you to vote for immediate approval of the proposed alcohol ordinance amendment TA 130.01. In September 2021, North Carolina passed House Bill 781, which empowers Zebulun to allow for the purchase and consumption of alcohol within a defined area, a social district. This legislation was passed at a critical time as new Zebulun businesses and building owners are investing heavily into this area. In fact, some of these stakeholders have leveraged every asset they own to open its doors in Zebulun. HB 781 represents a prime opportunity to support these stakeholders and connect the community to a vibrant, revitalized downtown. The proposed ordinance, TA 130.01, provides an opportunity to support the downtown community while testing the waters on expansive alcohol consumption areas, the social district. For the retail and service community, we are amid our peak outdoors sales and community engagement season. Each passing day is a noticeably lost opportunity to demonstrate your support. Acting now maximizes both the social and economic impact of the ordinance. We are excited to be a part of progress within the town. We are excited to be a part of change that our elected officials have boldly campaigned for. Please help us by taking action on TA 130.01, a progressive step in both a positive and economically prosperous direction for the community. Respectfully yours, Brandon McCraney, Chair of the Board for the Zebulon Chamber of Commerce. And then at the bottom, there's Downtown Zebulon Business Community Supporters and Chamber Members: Charles Estes, Dallas Pierce Realty, Delrich Inc., Design Dimensions, East Wake Collective, ERA Parish Realty, Germano Architectures and Interiors, Little River Printing, LLC, Mythic Brewing, Nell Carroll, Old Raleigh Distillery, Second Wind Computers, The Fall Line, the law offices of J. Michael Weeks, PA, the Noel Group, Nomeco, The Inventions, community investors, and chamber board member.
Thank you. Do we have any other online or comments for public comment?
No, sir, not at this time.
Okay, close the comments, public comment, and move to consent. Is there a motion to pass consent?
I move to pass consent as amended.
Is there a second?
Could you repeat the motion?
Pass the consent
As amended.
as amended?
The as amended is not necessary because they were already pulled in the amended.
Then I move to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
What is the motion you want to
I'm sorry, I can't hear
repeat the
you.
motion one more time, please?
The consent
A second.
Okay.
has been a motion and a second.
Vote.
Just a point of order. If we already removed some items from the consent agenda and then approved the agenda, I think we've already approved these items that
Yeah.
have not been removed.
No, sir, we have to make a motion and approve the consent agenda.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second.
I move we approve the consent agenda as amended.
We already have a motion and a second.
Are we voting now?
We're voting now. We'll start with Commissioner Lau.
Approved.
Commissioner Harrison?
Approved.
Motion passes. Okay. Public hearing for the budget.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Tonight is the public hearing for your FY23 budget. A brief outline of what we'll discuss tonight. We'll review the statutory requirements just so the members of the audience that are here or are watching online can understand some of the prescribed schedules and processes associated with this process. We'll do a brief review of the budget message you received at your May regular meeting. As far as the statutory requirements, if you need to get back to sleep, you can look them up under General Statute 159. In brief, they put forth the deadlines for different submittals, the most important being that not later than June 1st, a budget and a budget message is submitted. So the budget message was submitted on May 2nd. We handed out the budget in different increments, and then the full budget was handed out and complete to you at your third work session, so that met that deadline. As far as the next deadline, before adopting the budget ordinance, the state statutes require that you hold a public hearing. That is happening tonight. And then the final stipulation of the prescriptions within the state statutes is that when you adopt the budget ordinance, it's not later than July 1st. So having that out of the way, those are some of the means and methods behind the process that you follow as dictated by the General Assembly. Brief review of the budget message, the goals and features. So once again, as you've heard from me, the budget is not an annual process of balancing debits and credits. The budget is a policy document because it is a policy document because it prioritizes what you think is most important and advances on the goals within your strategic plan. So a real quick review of that year-long community engagement effort that produced the strategic plan. So out of that process, through community engagement, the goal of the plan is that we are going to be a vibrant and a growing community. And while we're growing, we maintain our small town charm and our heritage. And the mission, meaning specifically the Town of Zebulon organization's role in achieving that vision, is to enhance quality of life for our residents, to deliver not only excellent but friendly service, and foster collaboration. More specifically, what this means is government is not positioned or in a place where it can do it all. It's not expected to do it all, but we can do great things when we collaborate with members of the nonprofit sector and the private sector. So the three sectors combined, by fostering collaboration, we can move forward on the goals that are identified in the strategic plan. Of the focus areas, so this is of all the comments that the community members were saying, these are the things that they wanted to see happen by 2030, or these are the things that they did not want to change by the year 2030, fell into three broad categories. One, they wanted a vibrant downtown. They did not want to grow just for growth's sake. They wanted to grow smart, and they wanted to preserve and protect that small town life. So before you, what was presented in the budget is the programs and the projects that advance upon those three focus areas. And these are just highlights of what was presented at the budget message. So to review within the vibrant downtown focus area, the goals are to revitalize downtown and to attract people downtown. The issues or the hurdles associated with that is it costs a lot to revitalize downtown. A lot of those buildings are very old. They're structurally compromised. To bring them up to being structurally compliant, but also compliant with modern building access and fire codes, costs a lot of money. And you've seen that with some of the retrofits that different building owners have had to take responsibility for. When they get in there and they start digging, they realize it's a much more complex and costly and lengthier process than they probably envisioned. The other hurdle with having a vibrant downtown is this is a rail town, and so the founders of this town worked to sell every square inch of this place so they could generate sales and they could have a prosperous economy that's centered around the depot. The downside of that is there's very little public space. Up until recently, we've had to close down public roads in order to get public space. We've been active in discovering and upgrading alleys that we've discovered throughout downtown, and so that's a way to get public space. But it is a hurdle right now as far as when you want to have a place to attract people, that there's not a place for them to congregate. So this budget is a continuation of the alley activation. So you've seen successes of this and completions of this project in phases 1 and phases 2. So phase 1 is on the east side of Arundel, and phase 2 is on the west side of Arundel, and then backs behind that alley and then comes up and connects with Horton Street. Not only is the physical space opened up, but there's infrastructure improvements, most notably the introduction of Wi-Fi, as well as electricity, so that if food trucks, as an example, or bands need to hook up into high voltage setups, that's embedded within those alley activations. This budget utilizes the $700,000 earmark that we were able to achieve through working with Representative Price's office. So this is part of the infrastructure omnibus bill. So in the plan before you, it just talks about continuing the alley activations through the different segments that have not been completed. But it also envisions and starts to lay the groundwork for community areas, areas for artwork, as well as parking for downtown. The other big feature within the budget associated with a vibrant downtown is you have been very aggressive and have shaved off 1.5 years off of what is typically a 3-year-long process. Our downtown coordinator, Teresa Piner, has been very active in this and is a big reason why we're so far ahead. We're also so far ahead because with almost everything we do, we've got a very engaged community that wants to move this community forward. And so you have in this budget the option to fully join North Carolina's Main Street program. It costs because you have to have staffing associated with it. You also have to have support for the citizens that will make up your advisory board, but this is included in your budget, is to fully join the Main Street program. Second focus area is growing smart. Growing smart, in order to grow smart, your land use and your transportation network have got to be coordinated. So what that means is when your land use was primarily farm areas or land used to farm, your two-lane farm-to-market road system worked really well. As that land use changes from farming to residential, that network of farm-to-market roads is no longer adequate to meet that increased traffic demand. So you have a transportation plan that's been updated. You also have a land use plan that's been updated. And we'll talk about some of the implementation projects within the budget features of the budget that's before you. As far as staffing, we're a growing town, so we need more people, so that's a capacity-related issue. But we're also a quickly growing and diversifying town. So we have as many as 7 people come to the town of Zebulon. 2/3 of those people are from different places. So when they come from different places, they're bringing different perspectives, expectations, different skill sets, and our skill sets need to be in line to match theirs as well in order to adequately serve them. And as far as economic development, again, related to not growing for growth's sake, but to target that type of business or those types of industries that work well, that we want to see here, but also is realistic that they can not only start here, but thrive here and remain here. The issues related to coordinated land use and transportation and staffing is we're already growing. Those two-lane farm-to-market roads are no longer adequate to meet the land use that's turning into residential subdivisions. We're also getting older. The storm drain system, we have pipes underground that people don't think of because out of sight, out of mind, but some of those pipes are as old as town. So we've got pipes in there that are buckling, that are close to 100 years old. So this budget features increased staffing for police and fire, increases staffing to fully join the Main Street program, as well as to have an economic development specialist so we can target economic development. Public information officer, we got a growing town. There's a lot of people wanting to know what's going on in town. We need a coordinated effort, particularly if we adopt the brand this year. We'll need to have someone providing oversight so that we're consistent and use of that brand as well as promoting that brand. And then you have before you the American Rescue Plan funds. We have put before the board consideration of using those funds to upgrade your storm drain system. As far as transportation, you do not see funds in the upcoming budget because we want to get to a place where we complete the property acquisition as well as the permitting for the major projects we've got, specifically the signal upgrade at Green Pace and Arundel, the signal upgrade at Old Bunn and Shepherd School, and the signal upgrade at Arundel and Pierce's. We expect to come before you mid-year with a budget adjustment to fund the construction of at least Green Pace and Arundel signal. The expectation is that those projects would be funded through your transportation impact fees. The expectation also is that's going to be part of a larger conversation with how you allocate funds to other projects, parks and recreation being an example, fire stations being an example, how much you fund through fees such as transportation impact fees, parks and rec impact fees, as well as how much of your savings you use in general fund balance, and how much you take out on loan through a bond referendum. And then the third focus area is on small town life. We're trying to increase walkability where people can walk to different sections of town so we're not segregating communities. You have residential neighborhoods connected to commercial areas and vice versa. But also we have a quickly growing town where people are coming here probably because the price point is affordable comparatively in Wake County, but they don't necessarily know who their neighbors are. And so issues associated with maintaining a small town life is there are gaps, most specifically in our sidewalk network, but also our neighbors don't necessarily know each other well, and so there's ways that we can help facilitate getting them to know each other as well as engaging in their community. So the budget features related to small town life, first is anything you do to create a vibrant downtown is going to create that hub where people can come and gather and get to know each other and be connected to the community. Community engagement, so there will be very formal opportunities. Running for office is one, being on an advisory board is another, but there's very much some more simple ways to connect, engage, and then check out, depending upon how involved you want to be. So nonprofit organizations such as the Rotary Club is an example, but also our street litter pickup has been very popular. Rotary Club has been a big advocate and participant in that program. Again, a way to engage the community, to get to know each other, but also giving back to their community. Placemaking, downtown will be a big focus of your placemaking. Five County Stadium will be a big focus of your placemaking in the future. In this budget, we're focusing on the other anchor of the town, which is Little River Park. How can we turn that into a more productive, utilized park? But also the timing is really good because just north of the property, Wake County is looking to activate their reservoir area and possibly build greenways in that area and possibly, as a result, connect with Little River Park, making Little River Park the trailhead to a massive trail system. West Sycamore Sidewalk was a project that we put forth in last year's budget. It came out of the Walk Zebulun prioritization list. The Sycamore Sidewalk is just another way to connect areas of downtown. So we've connected north of downtown with a sidewalk extension. We've connected south of downtown with a sidewalk connection. We've connected the Boys and Girls Club with Zebulun Middle School. West Sycamore Sidewalk is an opportunity to connect downtown with that residential neighborhood to the west. Because the board was concerned, we had some concerns about revenue reduction related to COVID. That project was placed on hold. So we've introduced that project in the upcoming budget. Whether you use those funds for that particular sidewalk or another sidewalk is certainly a conversation for you to decide. If you want to hold off on that and make that part of your fall work sessions where you're talking about those other projects that I just mentioned, like the sidewalks and the roadways and the fire station, then you can include that conversation at that time as well. And that's just a picture of the connecting the downtown to the Wakeland Heights residential subdivision to the north of downtown. We will adopt a brand, and then you have funds in this budget to execute that brand in a couple of ways. One is to construct wayfinding signs. Some of those being major wayfinding signs that you would place out at interchanges. Some of those being minor, more easily implementable signs, such as throughout and going to the downtown area, as well as a logo change out for anything that we might use as an example on the side of our vehicles. So that concludes the presentation. Let me check with the clerk. Did the mayor open up the public hearing yet?
He did.
Okay,
Yes.
all right, so that concludes staff's report, and open up for any public comment unless there's some questions that the board has.
Any questions from the board? Hearing none. Any public comment?
Good evening, how are y'all doing?
Good.
My name is Glenn Todd Jr. I've been a lifetime resident here in Zebulon. I've got a couple of concerns with the budget or things that I think are important. Of course, you know, I represent the Zebulon Fire Department. I'm part of the Zebulon Fire Department. I'm a volunteer. I've been there 17 years. I love the fire department. I love what it gives. I want to ask everybody a question that's here in this room. Raise your hand if you love the fire department. and what we do for the community. I think everybody kind of loves what we do. And without the Zebulon Fire Department, the town wouldn't be what it is. On April 8th, I worked for the city of Raleigh. On April 8th, a call came in at my grandmother's house. The crew that came there, they were the only crew in town due to staffing. I called my grandmother to make sure everything's all right, and as I'm listening to the radio, the EMS truck is saying, hey, we're in Cary, we have a 45-minute ETA. I was happy because my grandmother was taken care of because the guys were there. The unfortunate side of it, if any of you all's family, anybody here's family, had another emergency, we would have had to rely on somebody else. Hopkins, Wendell, or the volunteers. I'm a volunteer, but I was at work in Raleigh. I couldn't come. That's a problem. When last year we ran about 400 calls that were duplicate calls, meaning that the units were somewhere else and we had to break away and try to break away. Sometimes you can, sometimes you can't, to go tend to another call, but other departments had to come fill in where we had a gap. That's a problem in my eyes, especially that we all live in this community. So problem number one that I see is recruiting people and getting the staffing up, but our pay is the lowest in the county. The pay for the Zebulon Fire Department is completely unacceptable because we are the lowest in the county. That makes no sense. As much as we've grown, these guys deserve a raise. They deserve to be comparable with the rest of the county. If you want to compete with the rest of the county, you need to have a salary that is comparable with the rest of the county. I've been in the city of Raleigh for 16 years as a lieutenant. You have a lieutenant here in the town of Zebulon that's been here 20 years. I make $20,000 more than he does. That doesn't make any sense. He has more responsibility than I do. I make more than every captain in your Zebulon Fire Department. I'm one step below them in rank. They have more responsibility than me. There are no battalion chiefs coming to help them out. They don't have another station down the street coming to help them out. They are all we got, and they're making subpar pay. That's not acceptable. The next thing that I would like to talk about is the staffing. In the budget, as the town manager told you, he's increased staffing with in the new budget. I'm asking y'all, I'm begging you, we need that staffing. You're killing the guys, literally. You're killing them for overwork, and they're overworked and underpaid for everything they do. If you have more staffing, when my grandma's on that call, when they're on my grandma's house, somebody else is in the town already, ready to respond. We're not hoping for Hopkins or Wendell or any other department to come fill in where we're having this gap at. We have our own guys and girls here ready to protect the city, ready to protect the town. And that's why we need you all to vote for this budget and approve it with the pay and the staffing that he's recommended. That's what we're asking. That's what I'm asking for as a citizen. One little thing is, it's a neighboring town that if their budget is approved, every firefighter below, from the rank of captain and below, will be able to go to that town and apply and make more money as a starting firefighter than every captain, every officer in the town of Zebulon besides the division chief and the chief of the fire department. That makes no sense. That's why we can't keep people and they're not staying long. They're constantly looking somewhere else to make more money. I can't fault them for that. I can't fault them. We can go to a department down the street, run less calls, and make more money. What would you do? I think we would all do the same thing. So like I say, during COVID we were here, when it's snowing, when it's hurricanes, anytime, the fire department's always here. When all of y'all go home at nighttime, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, if you go to your son's baseball game, your girls' dance recital, these guys and girls, they're still at work. They're there, they're missing all that time. They don't get that time. At least pay them for it. Pay them a fair rate. That's all I'm asking for. I asked you in the beginning, did you love the fire department? One thing that my mom taught me is love is an action word. So if you love this fire department, show us the action by voting for this budget that the town manager has approved in regards to the fire department. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else for public comment concerning the budget?
I have one that came in via email. My name is Donald Horton. I reside at 618 Stratford Drive, Zebulon, North Carolina. Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Unfortunately, I will not be able to be present in person for the budget public hearing due to a prior commitment at my church. However, I would appreciate it if the following comments would be read and entered into the record. First, I would like to thank the elected officials for their time and effort put forth to help determine the issues that are included in the proposed fiscal year 2023 budget. Attending as many of your meetings in person as possible and watching all the others over the internet. I appreciate your dedication to serve the taxpayers and citizens of the town of Zebulon. Second, I want to commend Town Manager Joe Moore and his dedicated staff for the detailed and informative documentation provided for each budget request. The information provided clearly demonstrates how each item meshes with and builds the foundation of the fiscal year 2023 budget and continues to clarify and improve the blueprint for the future of the town of Zebulon. After a detailed review of the entire proposed budget for fiscal year 2023 and attending in person or online all of the budget work sessions, I believe that the budget was thoroughly prepared and clearly presented by Mr. Moore and the staff. All current and future residents and taxpayers of the town of Zebulon continue to be truly blessed by having such qualified and dedicated staff that not only look at funding for current needs, but continues to develop a solid financial foundation for the future of our growing town. Yes, I am fully aware that to fund this budget will require a small tax increase. While no one relishes the idea of paying more taxes, I feel that this action has been soundly justified based on where the town is and where the future will take us. In summary, I believe as a result of a lot of hard work and collaboration between elected officials and staff, you have collectively developed a sound proposed fiscal year 2023 budget, and I thank you for that effort. Therefore, as a taxpayer and citizen of the town of Zebulon, I strongly recommend that you vote tonight for the adoption of the budget as presented. Thank you again for allowing me to speak tonight. Donald Horton. Also, under public input, I just wanted to let the board know that we had 158 views of the budget, but we had no responses or comments.
Is there anyone else wants to speak in favor of the budget?
I appreciate the ambition of trying to make Zebulon a town that is to be recognized. I appreciate the presentation, that there is a sentiment towards keeping it small town values. But I think one of the things that needs to be kept in mind is that part of being a small town and keeping those values is take care of our own. One of the things that's pressing us right now that is very simple to see as you drive down the street is the increase in the cost of just getting by in today's America. You don't have to drive very far to find out how much it's going to cost you to get there. And we need to be very fiscally responsible. And I very much support fire department. Which, you know, my grandfather founded the first fire department out in Long Island, New York, which was the first responder in 9/11. My uncle actually died of complications when the towers fell, because we were the first ones went out there. But I can tell you one thing that I learned from my grandfather, a much wiser man than I, was that instead of trying to go to tax money and go to other types of bases, his town council was creative. They actually created, in that instance, a county festival that went on every year that was a major fundraiser. And it did two things. It got the money necessary for public works. But the other thing was it brought together some of those commonality spaces and community networks. Not because people got to go to something, but because they built something together. So as we look at this budget, I saw broad strokes. And broad strokes are always very interesting. I didn't see the numbers. And before I would want to support numbers, I would want to know how it would affect my 80-year-old neighbor across the street who's on a very fixed income. And my 79-year-old woman with cancer next door who's barely paying her bills. Because that's what small towns do. Ambition, competing with other places, that's exciting. Taking care of our own, that's small town. Thank you.
Anyone else wishes to speak? for the budget? Anyone wish to speak for or against the budget? Hearing none. If there's no one else wish to speak, we'll close the public hearing, and the matter will be taken up later in this meeting. Old business, planning.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. Before you tonight is revisiting an item that you heard at joint public hearing 2 months ago. Specifically, it'll be related to Ordinance 2022-42 and Resolution 2022-13. The reason for these two parts is one is a UDO text amendment, which would require developers to follow the utility allocation policy, and then the resolution itself would adopt the utility allocation policy. To summarize what the utility allocation policy is, it is a points-based system to leverage the utility infrastructure, specifically the allocation that we own as the town, and we work collaboratively with City of Raleigh, to leverage that tool for quality development. As drafted right now, it would require a developer to meet 50 points in order to tap into the utility allocate or to the water and sewer system. It would be a combination of base points as well as bonus points in order to achieve this. The base points would be based on the use of the property. As an example, mixed-use developments, which would be less likely yet more desired, would already start with a higher number of base points, whereas your standard traditional single-family detached residential subdivision would start out with a lower number of base points, in this case 15. They would be required to make up the difference through these series of bonus point options. These options are focused on everything from amenity features to infrastructure to environmentally conscious measures to protect stormwater and the environment. As I noted, it does require a UDO amendment, specifically to Chapter 1, to require these measures to be applicable and require developers to follow the policy. But the policy itself would be just that, a policy. It'd be adopted by resolution, and it would be available to be amended and modified as changes and experiences see warranted. More so, the policy should be amended based on different technologies. As we change in terms of community, things such as increased in public transportation should be taken into greater consideration. Environmental conservatism, as we need to change items, providing bonuses for housing opportunities for low to moderate income officials or accessory dwelling units who are permitted by right, but otherwise not encouraged at this moment. Having those as potential things in the future could be a possibility. The planning board did take this up at the April 11th meeting following the joint public hearing and unanimously recommended approval to the proposed UDO amendment as well as the accompanying policy that was modified based on the discussions primarily during the joint public hearing. And you see those modifications reflected in the draft that was proposed to you. Staff does recommend the approval of the proposed ordinance and the amendment as presented tonight. And I am available if you have any questions. The options for the board tonight are to approve as presented, to approve as modified, or to table to a date certain with specific guidance to staff on elements or additional information that you'd be seeking, or to deny with specific instructions to staff if this is something that you would like to see a drastic rewrite or other opportunities. And with that, I am available if you have any questions. We do also have a sample motion available if you do decide to move forward tonight.
Any questions from the board?
I'll start off with a couple comments. Number one, I think this is very important. We have over 3,000 houses approved that have not been built yet. Therefore, we can be very selective in what comes to Zebulun. The number of points, I think 50 points is not adequate. I'm thinking maybe 60 points as a suggestion. And then I'm still baffled that a developer can come in and build an 18-hole golf course and get 10 points, or they can build a small coffee shop that's available to the public and they get 10 points, which I can put in a 1,000-square-foot coffee shop and get the same number of points as an 18-hole golf course. I'm still not past that. Other board members?
In addition, I think that there are ways in which some of these points need to be tweaked, and there is no mention of an EV charging station, and I think that that needs to be included with points assigned as well. And I agree with Commissioner Laux that the base points required to trip the utility allocation needs to be increased from 50 to at least 60 points.
Any other comments from any of the board members? So, do we want to move forward with the amendments? We're going to table it?
I move to table until, for discussion at a future work session.
Okay, we're going to need a second.
Second.
I'll second that.
And
Do we have to have a date?
You need a date and time specific, and I don't know, staff is okay with August, if you
Or we can also move this to July 11th and change that to a work session,
So we have something.
since we already have it on the books. July 11th?
I agree.
Okay. So
we have some things coming up later in the meeting that deal with the calendar that I think the town manager might want to speak to.
So, since we need to discuss a date,
What we can do is make a motion to speak to this under item D later in the meeting, which is after you guys talk about the changes in the needs.
so do we need to make a motion to move this to item D?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, then I make a motion to move this topic to item D.
I second.
we have a motion and a second.
Is there a second? I'm sorry, I wasn't watching, I apologize.
And we'll start with Commissioner Laus. Vote.
In favor?
Not in favor.
Not in favor.
In favor.
In favor.
Motion passes. Okay. Next ordinance, text amendment 130.01, alcohol regulation.
Mayor?
Yes.
Before we move into consideration of text amendments to Ordinance 130.01, I'd like to make a statement in response to concerns that have arisen over a potential conflict of interest involving myself. After a thorough review of the letter of concern and an investigation conducted by Wyrick Robbins, attorneys at law, it's been determined that there is no conflict of interest involving myself in regards to participation in any part of the process in tonight's discussion and any action or actions with Ordinance 130.01 and the proposed text amendment. My business engages in commerce with Old Raleigh Distillery, as it does with other businesses in town and across the area. The rate that Old Raleigh pays for my honey is consistent with the rates I charge other businesses. I don't receive remuneration for the sale of alcohol that Old Raleigh makes. My collaboration with Old Raleigh is exciting, and the notice that it has brought to our downtown is a source of pride and joy. I'm happy to help promote economic development of our amazing downtown with my business as I can. Again, I have no conflict of interest regarding this matter and will therefore be engaged in any discussion that may arise and will be voting on this agenda item. I encourage anyone who may be unclear as to the definition of conflict of interest or unclear as to what constitutes a conflict of interest in the state of North Carolina to direct their questions to the town attorney. Thanks.
Thank you. Also, a follow-up that with our town attorney for his conclusion.
Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. Commissioner Baxter received an email from a local citizen questioning whether she had a conflict of interest. And the conclusions that she stated are correct. There is no conflict of interest, but it might be helpful for the board and the citizens to understand how the conflict of interest is analyzed. First of all, we begin in North Carolina with the law in section 168-75, which says that elected officials must vote. They don't have a choice. The only way that they do not vote is if there is a direct financial interest. Then when you talk about the direct financial interest, there's two elements in how you analyze that. The first element is the matter under consideration. In this case, we have a matter under consideration to amend an existing ordinance to make it more permissive in terms of serving alcohol. And once you've identified what the matter is under consideration, then you have to determine whether there is a financial interest that arises from that matter. And it must be a direct financial interest. It must be a substantial financial interest. And it must be readily identifiable. In the case that we have at hand, the matter under consideration is an amendment. Nothing arising from the vote on that amendment amounts to a direct, substantial, readily identifiable financial interest that would accrue to the benefit of Commissioner Baxter. So that's how we got where we are. Happy to answer any other questions you may have.
Any questions from the board?
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Mike?
Good evening, Mayor. The ordinance before you, Ordinance 2022-39, is an amendment to Code Section 130.01, which regulates the alcohol consumption within the town of Zebulon. Right now, the way it's drafted is alcohol consumption on public property is currently prohibited. So you cannot have open container for consumption while on the sidewalk, the alley, or anything in between. In order to review this in the manner of the context based on the past work sessions as well as the past meetings, we conducted a survey which was done using public input. We went over the survey in terms of the general response at the time for the joint public hearing, or for the public hearing, and originally there were 630 respondents. The overwhelming majority were in favor of modifications to the ordinances. One of the questions was pertaining specifically to how does this relate to Zebulon proper, specifically the residents within our zip code. There was 466 responses that had the Zebulon zip code addresses. Those responses for the first two questions, we're not going to get into the third question, I'll explain why a little bit later, but the first two questions were the consumption of alcohol beverages should only occur inside of a building or on private property. For these, 31% strongly disagreed with limiting the consumption to private property or inside of a building, and 29% disagreed. We also asked kind of an inverse question. Would they support amendments? Specifically, patrons should be able to consume alcoholic beverages in public areas adjacent to an establishment. For this, 56% strongly agreed, 26% agreed, and 4% were indifferent. That remains only 14% of those with a Zebulon zip code that indicated that they were opposed, either strongly disagree or disagree to a proposed idea of consumption of alcoholic beverages in public areas adjacent to an establishment. So the proposed amendment before you tonight is a modification of section 130.01 of the Code of Ordinances. It allows for consumption on the sidewalks. Now, this isn't just for bars, but this is also for restaurants. Think in the context of an Italian restaurant getting a glass of wine and be able to sit out front on the sidewalk while you're eating dinner and having a glass of wine. It's also the adjacent public right-of-ways. We're blessed here that we have these adjacent right-of-ways, specifically the alleyways, that can be utilized either for public purposes or possibly collaborative with private entities. It is not a social district. There's been a lot of comments about the new general statute that allows for municipalities to create social districts. A social district allows for one to purchase an alcohol beverage from an establishment and then walk past the property lines into the public right-of-way and down the street or the other public area. This ordinance does not do that. This ordinance is only adjacent to the establishment, either within an adjacent public area, such as a sidewalk, or the sidewalk in front or beside the building. The economic impacts of potential regulation are pretty significant. We're the only municipality within Wake County that does not allow for any consumption of alcohol within the public right-of-way. This helps with restaurant recruitment, such as an example of this restaurant located in downtown Apex. Apex wasn't too long ago that they changed their regulations as well. Slowly, businesses started bringing tables out into the sidewalk, which improved and increased commerce for those potential businesses. As you can see, this business, which is a pub, it's full of families. You have kids running up and down the sidewalk. It's a fairly narrow sidewalk. Their sidewalks are the same width as our sidewalks are. It also creates downtown vibrancy. You see folks walking up and down the sidewalks here, and it creates a visual element outside of these businesses, not just looking inside the windows. New areas are doing this. This is an example of downtown Holly Springs, the downtown that they're creating anyways, near their town hall. This is an establishment that serves lunch, and you see there's patrons out there having a glass of wine or a beer with their lunch, and this is a public right-of-way. It also creates visual activity going on, not only in this context, but also in this. We have businesses, a particular wine shop that's going to be looking at a corner space. This could be their setup eventually someday. And it's not just within Wake County. You have situations such as this location in New Bern, or this location in Wilmington, or this location in downtown Raleigh. It's something that's very common within the state of North Carolina, even to the point where during COVID, a lot of these businesses were forced to move their experiences and their restaurants and their bars outdoors due to the restriction. Folks realized that they enjoyed it so much, suddenly they not only expanded from the sidewalk, but also started taking up public parking spaces. We're not suggesting that tonight, but that is something that some of the municipalities started making more permanent, because that outside vibrancy resulted in increased sales and it created increased interaction amongst the folks on the sidewalk. And it's not just downtown Raleigh, but it's other business or other areas of the triangle as well. And even some communities, they're planning for this. This is the Apex downtown plan, where this is a situation similar to what we have in the alleyway, where it's a public space adjacent to a potential restaurant, where they're going to be looking to encourage this type of activity. So to summarize, once again, this is not a social district. One would not be able to consume alcohol from one establishment and bring it down the street in a container to another establishment. It allows for sidewalk consumption. And it's not just in front of the business. We have situations on corner properties, such as the location where Eno Neo is proposing to go, which will have frontage not only on Arundel, but also on Horton Street. There's certain situations where, because of location, that creates additional opportunities for them beyond just the isolated of one location. It allows for adjacent public areas, such as the alley activation space that is next door to 120 North Arundel. We recently received word that a restaurant provider purchased that building and is going to be renovating it. I'm sure that he's watching tonight. One of the things that he wants to do as part of his business plan is to be able to utilize a portion of this area for outdoor dining. His restaurant also serves alcohol. So staff's recommendation tonight is to approve the regulations as proposed. The options for the board tonight are to approve as presented, approve as modified, table to a date certain with specific guidance to staff, or to deny with instructions to staff. And with that, I'm available if you have any questions.
Well, you all will be shocked that I have a few questions, some of which posed to me in conversations with citizens. So first, it's a little unclear on how ordinance is enforced downtown. In the April 4th, 2020 report, it was noted that current regulations will require additional staff and other resources to enforce their compliance. And state police will continue to educate, warn, cite strategically, coupled with aggressive marketing and communication plans on rules and regulations that will appear counterintuitive. In today's report, these statements have been eliminated, and it only states enforcing current regulations requires additional staffing to patrol downtown establishments. The cost of enforcement during peak times requires approximately $37,000 in overtime pay. An additional officer dedicated to downtown will cost $115,000. Now my first question will be for Chief Borkin. A few citizens, including myself, have read the way this is written as though we are not really enforcing existing laws and maintaining a safe downtown. Now because of cost, can you please explain this and assure our citizens our downtown is being patrolled and is safe and secure?
Can you ask the question again?
Yes, ma'am. I'll read it once again, please. A few citizens, including myself, have read the way this is written as though we are not really enforcing existing laws and maintaining a safe downtown now because of cost. Can you please explain this and assure our citizens our downtown is being patrolled and is safe and secure?
Our officers patrol the downtown area on a regular and consistent basis throughout the day, throughout the evening, and at night. On nearly every daily activity report that I receive from our supervisors, it indicates foot patrol downtown where they're interacting with patrons and business owners. We do have a policy of educate, warn, and cite. I think it's very important for us to use every opportunity possible to keep people out of the criminal justice system. And so we use those opportunities to inform people about what the rules are in town. And rules are different in each municipality that you go to. So we're transitioning from a time when everybody was having to operate in a state of unusualness. Going through COVID and allowing people to do business in front of the business because we were trying to maintain good economic activity was contrary to what we were used to, but it was a process by which we just had to reevaluate what was important in town. So we adopted this policy of the educate, warn, and cite, and we use that for a lot of different things. There is regular and consistent patrolling and enforcement going on in all areas of town, and I don't have any question about our ability to maintain security and safety downtown.
Thank you.
Chief, are you familiar with the ordinance as it's currently written?
Yes.
Okay, because currently it's not a criminal offense, but there is the possibility of citations being written. So I need to understand how enforcing this would enter people into the criminal code.
Okay, so what you're saying is that the ordinance as it is written is not a criminal offense, it's a civil offense?
That is correct.
I'm sorry, but I did not understand it that way.
Okay. Do you want my copy?
No, thank you.
Oh, okay, all right.
As for me, as a follow-up to the question earlier, are we to draw the conclusion, based on how this is written, that passing this ordinance would save the town the costs associated with enforcing current ordinance during peak times and/or a dedicated officer?
Ask me that again. I'm
Once
sorry.
again, as a follow-up to that question I asked previously, are we to draw the conclusion, based on how this is written, the passing this ordinance would save the town the cost associated with enforcing current ordinance during peak times and/or a dedicated officer?
Yeah, so I'll go back to what I said at the last meeting when we talked about this. I think that we have observed when people are enjoying the space at the fall line, it is a very natural progression for them to move beyond the space there and into the public space. And without significant barriers from one space to the other and signage from one space to the other, I don't think it's a natural expectation for people to believe that they're not allowed to go into that other space. So without some significant changes to, I'll use the word engineering, I don't know if that's appropriate, but some significant changes to the engineering of the space, it would require a great deal more effort on our part to manage the ordinance. And kind of touching on what Shannon was asking about, we still enforce the civil side of the ordinance. We can issue a civil citation. And so there's still a process that the police department has to go through to enforce the ordinance. And it would take more people and more time to be able to do that.
But currently, they're not enforcing it at all.
We are using the education piece of the Educate, Warn, and Cite.
Okay.
Cool question for you, Chief. We have been, we are, and I hope we always are the town of friendly people. And I have seen your officers down there repeatedly, so you are canvassing the area. At the bottom of the ordinance, we have a fine of only $50, which is basically date night, a couple cocktails, and a tip. What do you think it costs the town after we educate, after we warn, to actually write a citation? In the $100?
I would want to put the officer's time and effort into a formula to see what it would equate to, the time spent on calls downtown.
But clearly more than $50, I think is the point.
Depending on the nature of the call that brought us there, I think $50 is probably a pretty decent rate. I'm thinking quickly in my head what we make an hour and benefits and how long it takes us on a call when we go downtown or anywhere. And to even considering the cost of the uniform and vehicle that got us there, I think $50 is probably pretty reasonable for a half hour spent on a call of that nature.
And there's no court time or anything involved on this citation?
Not on a civil
Okay.
or.
Any other questions, comments for the chief? Thank you.
I have a question for Mike. I also have a question about liability. Who is liable for incidents that happen on public space due to alcohol consumption on it?
I'm going to defer to the town attorney on that one.
I'm sorry, would you repeat that question?
Who is liable for incidents that happen on public space due to alcohol consumption? Would that be the town or would it be that facility, the bar owner?
Primary liability would be the bar owner. They're responsible for compliance with their ABC permits. They're responsible for the Dram Shop Act compliance. They are responsible for maintaining decorum of their patrons. It's the bar owner's responsibility primarily.
When you say primarily, how is that determined if something was to happen?
Well, it might be an individual's responsibility as well. If the individual is acting in a way that is beyond the control of the bar owner, then it wouldn't be the bar owner's responsibility anymore. That's why I said primarily.
So there would be no liability on the town of Zebulon, correct?
No, not directly from serving alcohol according to the law. There wouldn't be.
Thank you.
Now, we have public spaces that are outside of the alleyway that is adjacent to the fall line. One of those public spaces is a parking lot. Alcohol consumption at the Pizza Amore restaurant is adjacent to that public space. So are we to say that we are allowing consumption of alcohol in that public space? Because that is what I'm led to believe by the way this ordinance is written.
No.
Okay, well then explain that, please.
The parking lot has a primary activity that is related to the parking and storage of motor vehicles, similar to the drivable alleyways behind the establishments. As an example, behind Pizza Amore, there's an alleyway that is vehicle accessible. The alleyway adjacent to 120 North Arundel and to the fall line is a non-vehicle public space.
And what other alleyways in town would that apply to?
Without looking at a map, I believe that there is potentially a couple, I believe there's an alleyway behind the pawn shop, but I'm not sure if that is vehicle accessible or if it's just pedestrian accessible. So without looking at the map and the actual configuration of the surfacing, I can't make a final determination on that.
And so what about the alleyway that is behind the distillery?
That's vehicle accommodation.
Okay, and so the only business currently in town that would benefit from this ordinance as written is going to be the fall line?
And the potential new business that's going to be moving into...
I'm talking about just the one that's right here, right now, not any potential ones that don't exist.
At the moment, that's correct. However, this regulation was written for other businesses as well, such as if a business goes into the existing wig shop that's located across the street. We have a similar situation where it's a pedestrian alley where we have already allowed for the coffee shop to utilize that area for outdoor seating and consumption of coffee.
But they're not serving alcohol.
Amanda has not contacted me about getting an ABC permit, no.
Okay. All right, so.
Okay, I would like to make a motion. I hereby move to approve ordinance 2022-39 to amend section 130.01, finding that the proposed amendments are consistent with the vibrant downtown efforts in the 2030 strategic plan and the comprehensive land use plan's recommendation to activate alleys and other underutilized spaces.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
I second.
A roll call vote. Commissioner Laux?
In favor?
Favor?
In favor?
In favor.
Against?
Okay.
Motion passes. Next, we have facility use policy.
All right, good afternoon, Mayor and members of the board. I'm bringing before you the facility use agreement for your park and recreation facilities that are available for the public to submit an application and utilize it. So that includes our baseball fields, the community center, as well as our picnic shelters. A lot of these policies were put in place many, many years ago. As we've adopted our Play Zebulon Parks and Recreation Master Plan, we have been working to review policies and procedures within our department to make sure that we are consistent with our plan and that we are consistent with the goals of our community and that we are using best practices. And so in doing so, we recognize the need to update our policies so that there's consistency for our community, transparency for our community, as well as for our staff as we work from one type of facility to another, that there are similarities in how we do business and how we operate. Just as an example of why that's important is, years ago, you would have to go to one person to rent an athletic field, you'd go to another person to rent a community center, you go to a third person to rent a picnic shelter. So the process to do any of those three things was completely different. The rules were going to be a little bit different. And so that is confusing for a community member when they were used to renting a picnic shelter and now they want to rent a community center, but there's not consistency there. And we recognize that their facilities have differences. And so that is accounted for in each policy. That's why we presented a different policy, but the core pieces of each policy are similar within each. This was brought before you at your May meeting, and it was pulled from the agenda. I received questions from each individual board member. I've provided answers to those questions in your staff report, and I'm prepared to answer additional questions you may have.
Any questions from the board? Comments?
Yes, comments from me. I'm not comfortable voting on this right now. I'm not a grammatical guru, but I've noticed a few and have had citizens point out inconsistencies and grammatical errors and confusing clauses that need to be addressed. For a quick example, on the athletic facility reservation and license policy, number 26, staffing that is required during the usage will be at the expense of the licensor. As it reads, the town is the licensor, so this would make the expense to the town. This should be licensee instead of licensor. In the community center reservation and license policy, the usage of the word applicant does not mean the word applicate does not mean the same as applicant. Just to give a few examples.
Okay. Could we go back to the first one?
The first one would be number 26 on the athletic facility reservation and license policy.
And what was the question?
It's not a question, it's a state. Staffing that is required, if you read it out, I'll read it once again. Staffing that is required during usage will be at the expense of licensor. As it reads, the town is the licensor, so this would make that to be an expense for the town. This should be licensee. Am I to take that correct?
Yeah, it should be licensee, but I mean, that's a grammatical error that can be fixed.
Correct. That was brought to your attention earlier before that, and I asked also staff to read it and kind of like give a little bit better understanding of those grammatical errors. But the policy that we're about to adopt is the exact same that was prior to me bringing that to staff's attention.
It shouldn't, I mean, I believe we had changed all of those in every document, so if it did not, if we missed one, that is my apologies, but that's a grammatical error that we can fix here.
Yes, ma'am.
And that it is not material to the document for us to make that change now and still be able to move forward. Was there another question?
No, it's really not questions, just making sure that when a citizen, I see the average age of renting things are 21. I put myself as a 21-year-old coming in to rent a facility. I just want to make sure that it is clear and concise of what they're to do and how it's to be handled. That is all.
So what's the question pertaining to that?
There's not a question. It's just a matter of fixing the errors, the grammatical errors there, and then we kind of move forward with it. That's all I'm saying.
Well, so you don't want to fix that error right now, or you want it to come back to you at a later date?
There's a series of, that's just one example that I gave. There's some more that I can get back with you if you like, or whatever it may be, but I was under the impression, I spoke with the town manager. He stated that he was going to read it as well, and those issues will be taken care of. So to see the same policy again that haven't been taken care of, that is my issue there. It's not a question, it's just making a statement. That's it.
Well, I thought based on the information that I received from the board, we had caught all the grammar errors. I apologize if we did not. Happy to make sure that that change is made
Yes, ma'am.
if you were to adopt it tonight.
All right, thank you. Thank you.
Any more questions, comments from the board?
I make a motion that we approve the facility use policy.
I second it.
We have a motion and a second. We do a roll vote. Commissioner Louds?
Discussion first?
Oh, I'm sorry, discussion.
I approve.
No discussion. I'm in favor.
Oh, yeah.
No discussion?
No.
I'm in favor.
I approve.
So motion passes.
Thank you. Thank you once again. Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Madam Clerk, we need to take a 10-minute recess.
No problem.
He was looking.
I told him I learned them. I was able to read them a little bit, and so ever since I told him that, now he just looks down at his feet.
You're the mediator with the research recessing. She's going to have to show you don't have much.
We're going to be in charge of the police. Okay, we got it.
We have a new system.
Yeah, we got it.
Because when I have to
she showed me, and then that's when I wrote that, and I tried to do it at a good breaking point.
Yeah, thank you, because
I need that.
Sometimes I just, and usually I will go before, but I didn't.
Can you hear everything I said?
Oh, yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah.
I know, but I mean, I'm not thinking.
But yeah, I was sitting there, I was like,
I keep
what do I do?
going.
What's that?
It's been 30 minutes.
Fun times. Yes. I was very excited to see the young firefighters. It was awesome.
Go ahead.
Need to convene, ready to convene?
He's over there.
He's in.
She was there. Sorry. No, you're fine, sir. You're fine, sir.
Okay, new business, historic marker project.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. Good evening again, Mr. Mayor, members of the board. The item before you tonight is more of an informational item. As you know, historic preservation comes in many different capacities. One of which is either a historic district, either a local district or a national district. However, another is recognizing the story behind history. One way to do that, especially in the context of either buildings being removed or substantially modified, is through different markers such that you'd see on the roadside or other opportunities. We have worked collaboratively, cooperatively more or less, with Wake County Historic Preservation on the creation of the first two historic markers for the town of Zebulon. I'm going to bring up Jeremy Braddock from Capital Area Preservation, who's the staff for the Wake County Historic Preservation, to talk a little bit about the first two markers that are going to be provided.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Board of Commissioners. We're so good to be here again and to see you all. We're going to talk about the historic marker project. I'm going to let Jeremy Bradham, who works with me as the preservation specialist, he will introduce the basic kind of the structure, how it came about, and what's going on, and then I'll come back for a few observations.
Good evening, Mayor, Board. So the two sites that we looked at, the Wake County Historic Preservation Commission last spring started examining sites based on the discussion around the Zebulun National Register Historic District. And there was concern last spring. I wasn't able to attend that public meeting y'all had. I was actually day 2 of recovering from back surgery at the time. So the gist that we as staff received from that was that there was not a lot of recognition of the African American aspects of the proposed district. And so we wanted to pick a couple sites just in case the district was going to go to the keeper of the National Register as proposed at that time, and look to acknowledge those sites and the history that they had to the town of Zebulon. So what we did was we went to the historic resource map and we found two locations. We found a Prince Hall, Masonic Lodge location, and we found the former site of a Rosenwald school. As you know, there were a lot of Rosenwald schools in Wake County. There's really only about 3 left now, 2 are private residences on top of that. And so last spring that was introduced. In the summer, our commission voted to appropriate funds for this landmark, for this plaque program that we were going to do here in Zebulon. And so those 2 sites were decided on, and we decided to hire a consultant. In the process of hiring a consultant, we actually learned that the towns of Fuquay and Apex were doing this same thing, so we thought we were doing something new. So this is actually kind of almost a joint thing that Wake County's doing, but we started it without knowing that they were doing it. But Zebulon would actually be joining in Fuquay and Apex, but they both dedicated their markers to their Rosenwald schools actually back in March. So we did choose these 2 locations because they are on the state study list for
for the National Register, which means they were recognized as very important to not just Zebulun history, but African American history in this part of Wake County. And that's the main reason that we chose those sites and these two roadside markers that will be there. And if you're familiar with the ones that we're referring to, the gray, large roadside markers that have about 110 words or so.
So I think you've seen in the staff report kind of how the project has broken down. The Historic Preservation Commission has committed to prepare the text for both of the signs. And again, just to reinforce what Jeremy said, this is intended to be a starter. This is kind of where we leave you, but it's certainly something that the town can expand upon. It's just these two are we think are great initial places to recognize, but I'm sure there's certainly many, many more. But so the commission has put out the funds to do the text. They have the funds to actually produce one of the signs, and the town staff, with funds that had previously been allocated, is going to produce the other sign as well as the posts for both of those, and kind of initiating the community outreach, because we do want to know what people think of the signs and what the verbiage and so forth. I think so. That's kind of the structure of it. I think. One of the things that occurs to me is, these signs have to be, by their nature, they have to be brief. So they can't tell the history of everything. But we do hope that they will be a conversation starter and that they will also be potentially even suggest other topics to research. Now, one of them will be going in front of the middle school. So that's very timely, and that's a very good spot for people to say, well, what does that mean? I just picked out a few words, and there are more to look at it. But if you look at the two signs, and I know you have the text, think about Prince Hall. Who's Prince Hall? Prince Hall Freemasonry. What is Prince Hall Freemasonry? What is the Masonic movement in general? The Rosenwald Fund. There's a lot to explore there. Julius Rosenwald. Who is he? Booker T. Washington. Who is he? Dr. James E. Shepard, for whom the school was eventually named. This is a particularly, I think he's probably the least known of some of the others, and he's a particularly distinguished and accomplished gentleman who was one of the founders of, or became a founder of what became NC Central University. So he has no personal association with the school, but the school was named in his honor, as sort of an honor for him after he passed. So there's a lot in here. There's a lot of threads, I think, that can be followed, and we're hoping that we can start those conversations and get people curious about the history and what's going on and what's happened. And the fact is that these two plaques tie Zebulun into really national movements. These are local sites that have local impact, but they are both tied into national, and in the case of Prince Hall Freemasonry, even international, has international ramifications. So we're excited about the two. If anyone has any questions, you've got the text. We're still unable to make additions to that. I know you're an alumnus of the James E. Shepard School, so if there are other people who may want to look at it and comment on it, we're hoping to get the first marker into production by the end of this month, because the commission's funds are tied to a year, and that fiscal year is coming to an end. So we've already taken care of the writing and paying for that and so forth, and the researching. So yeah, we'd love comments. Any questions anybody has? If there's anything we can fill in, be happy to do that.
Just a quick question. Have we reached out to the Alumni Association for the James E. Shepard School?
We have through the mayor,
Okay.
and we're hoping that they will be taking a look at this and commenting on it.
Thank you, sir.
So, well, thank you all.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
And to follow up what Gary and Jeremy said, this is a collaboration between the town of Wake County. The funds that we have allocated through the planning department will be rolled over into the next fiscal year to allow time for in-depth conversations. If you do have any suggestions, concerns with any of the text, please contact me offline, and we can make sure that we convey them to Wake County Historic Preservation. And with that, I'm available if you have any questions.
I just have a comment. Thank you for that recognition. It's been something that the community has been talking about for some time. The James E. Shepard Alumni Association, they're aware of the marker, and just talking to a citizen today about the history of Zebulon. You know, it needs to be told completely. So we appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. As mentioned before, the budget message was presented on May 2nd, 2022. The board subsequently convened 3 budget work sessions on May 10th, May 18th, and May 26th in order to hear detailed components of and offer the public an opportunity to provide public input on the FY23 budget. The board has scheduled the budget public hearing and upon its conclusion has satisfied all statutory requirements to adopt the FY22-23 budget ordinance. The discussion before the board is adopt the budget ordinance as submitted, modify the budget ordinance, or table the discussion until a meeting on or before June 30th. Take any questions or comments you may have.
Questions, comments from members of the board?
I've got several comments, and I don't know if we want to table this or not.
I'd like to table this for further discussion at a work session. There's just far too many things that need to be discussed.
With that said, I second
Is that a
table.
motion?
I move.
Okay. Well, go ahead and make a motion.
I move
just
to
want-
table this for further discussion at a work session.
And I second that.
Discussion?
Well, if we table it, we have to set a work session date. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
And that will come down into
Item D down there?
Item D.
Okay.
So then do we need to make a motion to move the budget ordinance to item D?
If there's no discussion amongst the board, yes.
Yeah. We're in discussion.
But if you do, then we want to be able to make that motion during that work session. I know we always say we don't make motions in work sessions, but it will be time, and we will need to be making our motion during that work session.
I know historically, we've not made a decision and voted in a work session, but I believe we can.
Oh, yes, we
Yeah.
can. We've done it before, yes.
But historically, we've not.
Well, yes. But I think it will need to be made at the work session.
Any more discussion? So we have a motion and a second. We'll start with Commissioner Laux.
In favor of table?
In favor.
In favor.
In favor of tabling?
Okay, so we'll move it to item D as far as the scheduling of when the work session will be.
Okay. So the staff has put before the board for consideration several changes to their meeting calendar, and we can add the budget ordinance discussion and adoption as another meeting as part of the discussion. But first, let's talk about what staff is proposing. So staff, when we developed the meeting calendar for the board consideration, did not include a July meeting. And the reasons that we don't include a July meeting is it's early in the fiscal year, and so there's no financial reporting. And also the development community does not have development issues that need to come before the board. Also, in light of the fact of all of the mini retreats through the spring season, as well as all of the budget work sessions, and recognizing that the fall is going to kick off with more mini retreats, staff's making a recommendation to remove the July 11th meeting from the meeting calendar. And then in addition to that, add some meetings. So August 25th, add that as a strategic plan mini retreat. So this is part of that process where you have several projects, whether they be roads, whether they be parks, or fire station, or other capital projects, where you can start that conversation about how to prioritize and then ultimately how to fund. So the second recommendation from staff is to add August 25th as a mini retreat. The September 15th meeting, which is the work session that staff is recommending, that was originally shown on your meeting calendar as September 22nd. And the reason for that is for the Labor Day holiday. But since we're getting into the introduction of mini retreats, the third recommendation staff is making is to move that September 22nd work session to September 15th. So adding a meeting on September 15th as a work session, convert the September 22nd meeting to a capital projects mini retreat. And then the fifth recommendation is to add October 27th as the bond referendum mini retreat. So those were the recommendations that we had planned. With the board not adopting the budget ordinance, they need to schedule a meeting before the end of June, so that needs to be discussed now. The board also did not adopt a water allocation policy, but in talking with the planning director, we've got some time on that, so if you would like to have that moved to the August work session, I think we'll be okay, because we're not expecting any and have not received any development that would fall under the provisions of a water allocation policy. So in short, what I'm trying to say is you have time. You don't have to move on that issue sooner than the August work session. So again, 5 recommendations before you, a 6th being when will be the date to have the budget work session / decision.
And in addition, I am going to be at the I'm going to be at the School of Government's Advanced Leadership course on August 1st. And so I would like it if we could schedule that meeting for another date. I'll be gone until the end of that first week.
Maybe move it to August 8th, 1 week later.
I can do August 8th for sure if anyone else can.
That's a joint public hearing night, so.
And that's scheduled?
It's on the schedule online, so yes.
So we could do August 9th?
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
I have an additional for June 16th. I thought we had discussed that a little bit, of changing that date.
Right.
For the next meeting?
Correct.
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you available?
15th and 16th, I am not available.
She's going to be out of town, and also...
I'll be at School of Government June 15th and 16th, so those dates are
Can we do the 13th?
13th or 14th?
I leave on the 14th.
You leave on the 14th?
Yes.
So looks like the 13th. Is 13th okay?
13th is good for me.
Okay.
It works for me.
Yeah.
Excuse me, was that June 15th?
13th.
June 13th.
So 16th to the 13th.
Correct.
So my recommendation would be that that would be the date you discuss this budget ordinance. So what I've got right now is, in addition to the 5 recommendations from staff, two additional changes to the meeting calendar, one being August 1st regular meeting moved to August 9th, and the scheduled meeting on June 16th moved to June 13th, with the purpose of that meeting to discuss the budget ordinance.
Do we need to vote on that?
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
Is there a motion?
I make a motion to change the dates as modified and as recommended by staff.
I second that.
Favor?
Favor.
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 Motion passes.
Thank you.
Okay. E1. The first was 525. Special call meeting. Commissioner Baxter.
On 525, the meeting minutes are incorrect. They have the mayor of Knightdale listed as a speaker when it was actually Councilor Latacious Morris. Do you need me to spell her
So,
name?
yes, please.
Okay. It's Latations, and her last name is Morris, Morris.
Thank you.
Questions, discussion? The next was 526 work session.
We need a motion to approve that, please.
I move to approve the May 25th, 2002 special called meeting minutes as amended.
Second.
We have a motion and a second.
I'm sorry, for the May 25th meeting minutes, I am not listed as present.
Ah, thank you.
You're welcome. Need a new motion?
Do we need to make another motion?
No, sir.
Nothing.
It'll be fine.
Okay.
Favor.
All in favor?
Favor.
Okay. Next one is the 526 work session.
The 526 work session on page 2, the first sentence should read stated.
Yep.
And that was the only correction that I have.
Thank you.
Their motion.
I move to amend the work session minutes.
We have a second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Favor?
Favor.
Okay, motion passes. Next is Ordinance 2022.
When the employees are working off duty, I assume that they are not accruing vacation, but I need some confirmation.
You mean additional vacation from normal? Or?
Correct, they're not accruing vacation.
No, none of the off-duty work is affecting
Okay.
any kind of vacation or sick accruals at all.
Kind of curious, what kind of safety services do we provide for GSK and U.S. Foods, just for general knowledge?
Well, GSK has not been lately. It's been a couple of years ago for some security type issues. Let's say they were laying off some people. They've asked for some 1 or 2 officers at a time when they were doing that, but that's been a few years. That was just an example. Mainly it's U.S. Foods. Mondays and Fridays, they direct traffic out there from, I think, 5 in the morning till 8 or something like that for 3 hours. It's 3-hour segments.
I think. Thank you.
On Mondays and Fridays when they have a lot of trucks coming and going. And then Mudcats is for home games.
Okay. How is the money reimbursed? How is it collected? Is it done monthly or quarterly? How is that done?
Monthly.
Okay. Thank you.
Now, one question I brought up last year during the budget that I never really got a clear answer on is how is that calculation derived that we bill hourly for the officer? Because we have the cost of the car, we have increasing gas prices, et cetera, and I just wanted to know how that hourly rate's derived.
They are paid an hourly rate. I think it depends. U.S. Foods is $35 an hour. Mudcats is $25, I believe it is. And we recoup all costs, retirement, FICA and all, workers' comp, and bill that into the hourly rate. So what we pay the employee, the Mudcats and U.S. Foods pay the benefits also. So it's a wash.
I understand that the officer is paid hourly for working, but in that calculation, the town is paying for the car, the gas, et cetera, and it seems like we should recoup some of that expense.
Yeah, we have not done that yet.
I would just like to see some calculations at an hourly rate as opposed to just a flat what the officer's being paid.
Especially as some of the time these vehicles are kept running for the duration of the off-duty work.
Yeah. We can show you the calculation. It's not in here, but we can show it.
If we could see that at our work session.
Any other questions, comments? So we need a motion to move this.
You would need a motion to approve the money. Approve the ordinance, rather, excuse me.
I'll make a motion to approve ordinance 2022-46 as submitted.
Second.
Favor?
Motion passes. Next is 2022-52, governing bodies.
Yes, so there is no breakdown of services. It just said expected legal fees associated with growth-driven issues. Do you have a breakdown of those services?
Thank you.
And can you please explain the difference between intergovernmental, departmental, and what might be included in other non-recurring expenses?
Would you like to take that, Eric?
I'd be happy to explain that if that's, if you'd like that, folks. Would you like me to give you an explanation about those categories?
Yes, please. Yes, please.
The legal services are calculated on that legal services fiscal year summary from July 2021 through April 2022. And the categories are identified in the left-hand column as meetings, growth-driven, intergovernmental, departmental services, and other non-recurring. The meetings are self-explanatory, includes board meetings, work sessions, as well as department head meetings where attorneys attend and the fees that are associated with that. It's a significant portion of it, 15.72%. Growth-driven has to do with matters that legal services that are required for issues that are primarily growth-related. I've got a key project summary below that. If you will see in the growth-related projects, it gives you an example of the types of things that we're talking about. The Zebulun Historic District work, GSK acquisition, East Wake EMS acquisition, Shepherd School Old Town Road project, Zebulun Swim Association acquisition, the Autumn Lake Speed and Loon dispute, the Old Town Hall property line dispute, the North Carolina condemnation. Those constitute most of the growth-driven items in a total of $219,439, which accounts for 68.51% of the total. So those are the primary issues. Intergovernmental has to do with items like the Wayne County non-discrimination ordinance, or more recently work with the legislature to advance electronic notice opportunities for the town. Departmental services are services that are delivered to specific departments such as planning, police, public works, and parks and rec, fire. And then other non-recurring or miscellaneous types of things that come up from time to time that do not necessarily have public matters or specific citizen complaint issues that we deal with that aren't necessarily attributable to any of the other four categories. As you can see, between the meetings and the growth driven, we're dealing with 84% of the total billings in those two categories.
And this is to make up for a shortfall in what was allocated for the FY22 year, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Yeah, anytime.
Any other questions, comments? Need a motion?
I move to approve ordinance 2022-52.
I second.
Commissioner Laux?
In favor?
Motion passes. The next was, it was contract with Wake County.
The police quarterly report would be next, sir.
Police quarterly report's next.
Mayor, it would be the police quarterly report would be the next item.
Okay. Quarterly report. Okay, Chief?
It is stated that the first quarter of this year, crimes were up 54% compared to last year at the same time frame. This is a significant jump. Is this part of the overall trend for this area, or should we be concerned?
The crime rate in general for the town of Zebulon has been on a steady decrease for the last 3 years. And in the last several months, have we started to see an increase in violent crime? This is something that is occurring nationally, and you hear it almost every night on the news. One of the tactics that law enforcement agencies are using to help offset some of the increases in violent crime are to focus on the primary offenders, identifying, generally speaking, there's a very few number of people who offend the most in a community. So we will be, we're working to identify our top 5 offenders in town, and we'll be working to target them and ensure that those offenders aren't influencing others in town.
Thank you. This isn't mentioned in the report per se, but I've been approached by citizens who are expressing feelings of intimidation, having police substations in an apartment, and i.e. in Maples and Privet Street. Many of the residents feel targeted, watched each and every time they walk out of their homes. I'm sure the substations were placed there to help provide a sense of security, but the residents aren't feeling secure. They're just feeling targeted and watched. How can we fix this?
The substation in the housing developments over around Primrose and Silver, where that cooperative effort was done several years ago in conjunction with the Housing Authority. It's something that we reevaluate every year. There is evidence that shows that there are benefits to having police more visible in communities, whether there's high crime or low crime. Having high visibility reduces crime. So we do encourage our officers to use the substation. They go through there periodically through the day, have lunch there, use the restroom. It's a good opportunity for our officers to get to know people in the community. I've not heard any comments about feeling intimidated or threatened by the officers there, and I would encourage anybody who does have that sentiment to come and share it with the police department so we can work through that. We have been asked by the Housing Authority to be there, so again, we'll reevaluate every year and see if it remains a benefit, but in my opinion, it has. Certainly, if there's other information that we need to know about, I would like to.
Is there a cost associated with the town with that?
No.
So they give us an apartment?
Yes, sir.
So how do we feel as if we're taking basically 3 apartments from a citizens potentially, just kind of like for a substation that's rarely used when we have citizens that need home? Now, especially in the time of affordable housing, is that something we can kind of reassess or take a look at, as you stated? So how would we take a look at that?
Can't speak to us taking away any homes. We've been asked to be there. We reassess it annually, and we'll continue to do that.
Who does that assessment? Does the board have anything to do with that, or is that something that the police force kind of does?
Evaluation between the police and the housing authority.
So is there a contract with that, or a leasing agreement?
Just an agreement that they allow us use of their facility.
And refresh me one more time the benefits of it.
There are several studies that show that high visibility in an area decreases crime, and it allows us to become more engaged with the community in the area.
So am I to believe that we should have substations inside of Weaver's Pond, Tyrone Lake, Shepherd's Park? Because those are the areas, every night at 9 o'clock we get assessments saying, reminding us to lock our doors. That's taking place in Tyrone Lake, and the incident just we had recently in Weaver's Pond. So would those substations benefit us there as well?
I think if any of the communities wanted to donate space to us to allow us to be more engaged with their community members, we would look at that opportunity and see if it would be a benefit to us.
Okay, thank you.
In February, there was a drastic increase in response time from 5 minutes and 22 seconds in January to almost 7 minutes in February. Is there a reason for that increase of almost 1.5 minutes?
I can't speak to any specific thing that would have created the increase. We do tend to see fluctuation between 5.5 minutes to 6.5 minutes. 6:51 is high. May was even higher. I think it's indicative of the increase in calls for service and the land growth, and just us having to drive further to get to the calls. But I can't speak specifically to February in terms of, February wasn't a month where we were at lower staffing than usual. And February, calls for service in February are right in line with January and March. So I wouldn't be able to say that it was a specific thing. I would just attribute it to the growth.
Thank you.
Any more questions, comments for the chief? Do we need a motion?
Yes, please.
Is there a motion?
I can make a motion that we approve the police quarterly report.
Second.
Ms. Rob?
Favor?
Thank you.
Motion passes. Thank you, chief. Let's see. I think we had one more.
Fire contract would be next, sir.
Oh, yeah.
I basically just had, under the background for me, the second paragraph, it states the current agreement for the fire protection service expires June 30th, 2021. Should that be 2022? Just verifying, that's all.
Where are you at?
Paragraph. Second paragraph on the background.
I'm sorry, you said the second paragraph on which page?
On the background, it's quote back, the section says background.
On the first page.
First
I
page.
see.
Just want to verify the dates. It states the current agreement for the fire protection service expires June 30th, 2021. Should that be 2022? Just verifying, Chris.
That is correct.
Thank you, sir.
These are, if I may, this agreement has been a work in progress for several years.
Yes, sir.
The original version expired a couple of years ago, so that's probably where that typo came from.
Thank you.
I have one question for you.
Sure.
In 20.4.2, there is reference to part of the contract being contingent upon the town engaging in live burn activities. If there are not live burn activities available, I know that they're becoming harder to source buildings that are adequate to burn. What will that do to the contract in general?
So when this is somewhat generic, the way it refers to live burn. This can take place at a acquired structure, which is like an old house or something, or it can take place at one of the fixed facilities.
Okay.
So we would use one of those fixed facilities. We typically go either to Bunn or to Archer's Lodge. Those are the nearest two facilities for us.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments for the chief? We need a motion.
I make a motion to approve the renewal of the fire contract with Wake County.
Second.
Commissioner Lyles?
Favor.
Motion passes. Next was flood hazard and overlay. Ordinance 2022-49.
There are two areas in here titled 9.4 definitions. One is just for the actual ordinance, is that correct? And the other area is just the information from the UDO itself?
That is correct.
That was my question.
You'll see the ordinance section starts where the text states ordinance 2022-49 at the top. Everything between that and the signature page is part of the ordinance that is before you tonight.
Okay, thank you. That was my only question.
Any questions, comments? Need a motion.
I make a motion we adopt ordinance 2022-49.
Second.
Commissioner Lyles?
Favor.
Motion passes. Next was ordinance 2022-50, play Zebulun.
For me, I think also it was just possible typo under background, fourth paragraph, which quotes once in 10 as buried between town hall and operations at GSX. I just think it's supposed to be GSK, if I'm correct.
I didn't understand, I'm so sorry.
Once again,
Yes.
background, fourth paragraph, once intended as barriers between town hall and operations at GSX.
Oh, it should be GSK,
Okay, just
yeah.
verification, that's all.
Yeah,
That's all.
well, the staff report, you're not actually taking action on the report itself. The action you'd be taking is for the ordinance, but yes, that is referring to GSK, and I apologize for that.
I just was verifying that it was GSK, that was all. Thank you.
Questions, comments? We need a motion.
I move to approve ordinance 2022-50.
Second.
I'm sorry, who seconded?
Favor.
Get a second.
All right, I'm sorry, thank you.
I approve.
Motion passes. Next was resolution 2022-28, downtown concert series.
For me, is y'all, you guys have been bringing it with events and programming, but this concert series is a game changer. I think I'm excited for it. Now looking back at the Spring Fest, we had a bit of a conundrum when the weather folks forecasted less than ideal weather for the day of the event, which then never really happened. What are we working on as far as contingency plans when Mother Nature throws us a series of curveballs before these events?
So, it's my understanding that the town is in the event business at this time. If you're in the event business, weather is part of it. And we did have a contingency plan for Springfest. The major components of Springfest were still able to take place. That was a very difficult forecast to navigate, where during our event, we did have lightning within a very close proximity to us that would have put us in a difficult spot to have to shut the event down for a period of time due to just lightning. But I think what's important is for us as a town, in the grand scheme of things, of the entire budget, what the investment is to do these events and the impact that we're having by offering these events, and how we are meeting our town goals from your strategic plan, how you are meeting your land use goals, as well as your Parks and Recreation Master Plan goals, is that the amount of investment is pretty minor in the grand scheme of your entire budget. And that for something like a concert, with the Downtown Concert Series, I mean, we would be able to do the same thing that we did with the major band with Motown. We would be able to move that to the community center if the forecast, we felt there was very little chance we'd be able to get that band to perform outside. And those are just sticky situations. My hope is that we will be able to be more comfortable as a town, taking the risk and being able to move forward with those events, so that, like Springfest this past time, it turned out to be a beautiful day. We would have much rather have been outside, I promise you that. But as we are in the event business, typically for an event like that, you're rain or shine. And so you go. And sometimes the bands don't go on, the major band. I have worked in my former position. We had an event with a budget of over $80,000. We brought a national act in for $20,000. They came on, they did their sound check, and it poured right before they went on, and they never played. But the event itself moved forward. And in the grand scheme of things, the goals of the town or the city, and the goals of the department and the goals of the event were what was important, and it moved forward.
With that said, you gave me that information. Thank you for that information about the past Springfest. I'm just saying, moving forward, are we currently working on something for contingency plan? I don't think I heard that. I may have missed it, but just for future events is what I'm saying. We're working on contingency plans for future events, weather.
Yeah. So every event is going to be different. Every contingency plan is going to be different. I hope that our contingency plan moving forward is going to be rain or shine. Okay. The contingency plan for Rock the Block is not going to be the same contingency plan necessarily for Springfest, because Rock the Block doesn't have as significant of an event impact. It's still very important, but you're not talking about Arundel Avenue. You can make those calls in a lot less time frame, like a much smaller time frame than impacting Arundel Avenue when you're just closing down like Horton Street. So every event has its own contingency plan, and yes, our department does work through those.
Thank you. Mm-hmm. Also, this also states we requested $5,000 from the United Art Council of Raleigh and Wake County. How certain are we that we will get that $5,000? And if unlike an event we don't, what is the plan?
So we've requested funding from the board to fully fund the Downtown Concert Series based on some direction we got from the board in the past. So our goal is to turn all of our events into a revenue generating opportunity where we seek sponsorships. And so that's what we've done with this $5,000, so that you're gonna start receiving a revenue stream for our events to help cover those costs. In this particular case, it will come across as a grant. So I'm fairly certain that you will get it because they have changed, and Zebulun gets some credit for this change, but they have funding that goes specifically to municipalities. And in the past, they've had this one pot of money and everybody had a competitive process and they would give you 20%, or they say you could get up to 20%, but you'd only get 10. We pushed back really hard that Zebulon had a much smaller budget and that the town of Cary had a much bigger, so their slice of the pie was this, but our slice of the pie was this. So they've come back and said all municipalities are going to be eligible for $5,000. It's in their budget. They have to get it released this month. And so I feel fairly certain that you will see that.
Thank you. Lastly, I'm sure you knew this was coming. This series has alcohol. How can we make sure the majority, if not all the vendors, including food trucks and things of that nature, are from the local area, kind of like taking care of home first?
Yeah. So that's actually a conversation my staff and I had today. We have done a call for food trucks in the past. Sometimes it is responded, the food trucks respond well to that. Sometimes they don't. If a food truck that is from Zebulon is not, if it's not obvious to us that they're from Zebulon, we don't know. And so typically what happens with food trucks is we have to go out there and solicit, because they don't come on their own unless it's a really big event. So what I have tasked staff with as today was put a process out there where we have a call for food trucks, but also for each specific event, put out a process where they are applying, because in the past, we have not necessarily always charged for food trucks to participate because we struggled so hard just to get them to come. And so that's something now we feel that we have established rapport that these food trucks can come to Zebulon and they can make money. And so now that we're in that position and we're not like pulling teeth to get them here, we can reinstitute a process where we're requiring an application fee, but also we've done a call. And in that process of the application, much like we do with the market, we'll have some guidelines where maybe you have limitations of you don't want all the food trucks coming to Rock the Block to be a cheeseburger venue. But we can also put some guidelines in there that say we're looking for, Zebulon first or Eastern Wake first, and they'll get preferential placement at our events.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
In those guidelines, is there going to be any verbiage that the food trucks have to use the electric outlets that Zebulon has now provided?
Yes, but that's also going to be setup dependent. And so whenever that's possible, like we would want them to use those receptacles. We have tried, like when we planned Spring Fest, that was one of the things that we looked at when we were placing it and spreading it out, was that we would have access to those outlets for use by the food trucks. But if you want to move in that direction for these larger events where all food trucks are going to be using those receptacles, then we need to install more.
Okay. The required closing says Horton Street from North Church to Arundel Avenue, then the downtown public lot and adjacent alley to Horton Street. But then it also says that you're only going to close portions so that businesses aren't impacted. So are you closing it? Are you not closing it? Are kids going to be safe? Or is it going to be another situation where we're worried about kids going out into the street and they could possibly get hit by a car?
So that comment is related to like a rolling event setup. So it takes hours to set up a stage and for the band to set up. And so we'll have to start a portion of our event setup much earlier in the day. And so rather than closing off that entire street, we have planned this event where we can just shut down the portion of the alley behind Debnam's to Arundel Avenue, still allow traffic while the stage sets up. So that's why that language was in the staff report, was that we're not going to close down that full stretch if it's not necessary for event setup and for the event operation. During the event, the entire section will be closed.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Yes.
First of all, let me thank you and your staff for putting this together, because we really do need an activity downtown every month minimum. But the caveat is, I think these events can in fact generate income for somebody. So we have to be very sharp here that we have food trucks and have vendors and can prove to a civic organization that if they want that month, they can actually make money doing this.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got experience where a series just like this, there were opportunities for civic groups to come in, and they actually partnered and generated significant revenue for their organizations by working with the city for those. So you're right.
But thanks for your work.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
Thank you.
I make a motion we adopt Resolution 2022-20.
Second.
It's been moved and second. All in favor? Motion passes. Thank you.
Before we move forward, Mayor, back to the quarter, I know we already approved everything. Just trying to find out, I've spoken with the chief about the substations. How can I see the results of that? Kind of get staff to see the results of that substation? What needs to take place to give guidance to see results from that?
I'm sorry, I missed the question.
We've already approved that quarterly report for the police. I want to see, she stated that there was like quarterly reports that is done annually for the substations. I would like to see that report. How can I see that from what I need to
Your
do?
request to the town manager.
Thank you.
So did we have one more? Okay. Board comments, Commissioner Louch.
First of all, I'd like to thank everyone who came tonight. It's nice to see an audience out there and people participate and let us know their feelings. Kudos to the junior firefighters, all 20 of them, and especially to Zach for supervising them and having them win that award. And a reminder that Juneteenth awards coming up, or ceremony parties coming up in a couple weeks. I'm gonna let Quentin give us the details on that.
As far as what, please?
Juneteenth.
Okay.
Yep.
During your board comment.
Gotcha.
And one little tidbit, if you've not been paying attention, the next time you get a 2022 quarter, take a look at it. That's just a tidbit. So check your change and look at the 2022 quarter. More next month. Jessica.
Thank you, Larry. On Friday, May 27th, my family and I were headed out of town to celebrate my kids' end of the school year. As we drove through town, we witnessed a minor car accident. At that moment when the accident happened, I was in disbelief. I wasn't sure what to do. I got out of my car and I spent around in about 5 circles trying to figure out what to do next. It wasn't until my husband looked at me and said, "Jessica, get back in the car, there's nothing you can do." However, as I spent in those circles trying to figure out what to do, I witnessed firsthand how amazing our first responders are. I witnessed an off-duty firefighter jump into action without a blink of an eye. His quick response, his professionalism at that moment were things that I will never forget. I want to take this time to thank and recognize volunteer firefighter Bobby Perry. Bobby, thank you for your service to the community. Thank you for your quick response in that moment where everyone around was feeling hectic, a lot of anxiety, and there was a lot of chaos. Chief Perry, thank you for your leadership and your training, as Firefighter Perry did an exemplary job during that moment. It was a time that I was indeed proud to be a citizen of Zebulon. Thank you.
I'm just glad everyone came out tonight and that we did a good job, still have a lot to do, but that we covered a lot of territory tonight.
Yeah, I'd just like to comment also, public engagement is very important. You help us guide policies and best practices because you're the citizens and we work for you. So thank you for your engagement. Thank you for being here tonight.
I heard it through the grapevines that there will be a large turnout tonight, but as we all know, the grapevine isn't always accurate. So I would like to take the time to recognize two lifelong Zebulonians who are no longer with us, but their impact on Zebulon lives on forever, Ms. Debbie O'Neill and Mr. Milton Jones. And I'd like to tip my hat to our award-winning junior firefighters and to our very own Ms. Zebulun for continuing to make us all proud. And I'd like to invite everyone to our Juneteenth celebration at Town Hall on Saturday, June 18th at 10 a.m., along with the parade that afternoon, Unity Through Community.
Mr. Baxter?
On Wednesday, June 1st, the mayor, my fellow commissioners, with the exception of Commissioner Clark, we all attended the town and state dinner that's put on by the North Carolina League of Municipalities at the Convention Center in Raleigh. Now, being able to spend time with leaders from across the state is always beneficial as we're able to share best practices, discuss trends, and connect on other meaningful levels. I was also able to spend some time talking with North Carolina Representative Abe Jones, who represents our area. Knowing that he is keeping our community in mind when he's working at the state legislature is really, it's comforting, it's energizing. And I would just like everyone to know that your commissioners are continually working to make Zebulon better, both locally and through our connections in the NC Senate and as well as the House. The Creative Cup will be holding its ribbon cutting ceremony on June 10th at 3 p.m. And I know that in just a short time since it's opened, it's become a gathering place, a workspace, and an integral part of downtown. And it's hard to imagine how we ever got along, before the folks at the Creative Cup were giving us caffeine. I wish them continued success. I encourage everybody to stake out their claim on the parade route early on the 18th. And I'm really delighted that our town is celebrating such an important event in U.S. history. June 18th is also the ribbon cutting for the Rusted Phoenix. We've long awaited their arrival, and their opening will certainly bring more foot traffic downtown. So if you want to attend the ribbon cutting, it will begin at 9:30 in the morning to accommodate for the Juneteenth parade. The closing day of the Zebulon Artisan Market is on June 25th. There are just 3 more weekends. If you haven't checked it out yet, stop on by the municipal complex Saturday between 9 and 1. I don't know who I'm talking to out here that needs to hear this, but there's a senior social tomorrow at 10 a.m. at the community center, so go have some pizza, hang out. There's an open gym for teens on Wednesday, and Super Tots baseball starts this Thursday. And then next week, starting on Monday, it's summer camp time. So I'm not sure if there are any availability still, but you guys can hop on Rec Desk to check if there are any openings if you want to get your child involved in one of the wonderful summer camps that Zebulon has to offer. The 24th is an outdoor movie from 7 to 10 at Community Park if you'd like to participate. It has been fun in the past. I don't see that will change. I think it will probably be a really good time. I would once again like to request of the town manager and staff that the commissioners be given a full calendar of events that go across all departments prior to each month. And I would like to make a recommendation to the town manager that he reevaluate his quality control process to make sure it is effective in catching mathematical, grammatical, spelling, and other such errors, not only in budgets, but in all other material documents that are presented to this board for a review and consideration. In the case of the budget tonight, The failure of the manager's review system would have had substantial downstream consequences to the tune of $58,300 if Commissioner Laux and I had not discovered it in our evaluation of the budget. Now, not everyone who is given staff-created documents for review has a background in financial analysis as I do, or has significant experience in budgeting as Commissioner Laux does. And so I urge the town manager to create a system or a process that will ensure that these results can be trusted, and I will certainly be forwarding my findings to you, as this was just for the requested departmental budgets, and I haven't even had an opportunity to review the capital budget requests yet, and so there might be more problems, I'm not sure. The end. Thank you.
Thank you.
I look forward to hearing and seeing the comments. Just as a reminder to the board and the community, the requested budgets will be different than the recommended budgets, so there will be a difference there. The budgets that the departments request are not always the ones that get recommended to you. They are forwarded to you so you can see the difference between what the departments are requesting and what's been recommended to you. This time, let me recognize a few of the department directors. So first, let me recognize Fire Chief Chris Perry for some employee recognitions.
In 2019, there were over 100,000 medical emergencies in Wake County. About 3,000 or so, at least several thousand of those are in the Zebulon area. For your fire department, that means about 1,200 calls that we do to medical responses. Those are the more severe, the more serious medical calls is what we respond to, where there's a lot of calls where EMS just responds to on their own. Well, last month, Wake County announced that 113 people had survived a cardiac arrest in 2021. Which continues the reputation that Wake County has one of the highest chances of cardiac arrest survivability in the nation. To be included, a person goes from a pulseless state to being successfully discharged from the hospital. That's awesome. Surviving a cardiac arrest is a true testament of the entire EMS system, from the 911 operator to the first responders to the hospital staff. Of those 113 survivors, 3 occurred within Zebulon's response area. I'm going to call out the names of firefighters, both employees, and volunteers who were recognized by Wake County for their life-saving efforts in 2021. Captain Philip Brown had 2 saves, Lieutenant Brian Blackley, Lieutenant John Winstead, Senior Firefighter Dustin Thorne had 2 saves, Senior Firefighter Austin Morgan, Firefighter Lee Shambly Jr., Firefighter Adam Hayworth, Firefighter Dwayne Perry, Firefighter Justin Perry, Firefighter Peyton Richardson, who had 2 saves, and Fire Marshal Chris Bissett. So congratulate all of them on fine work. Thank you.
And as you can see by the Perry family, firefighting is a family affair. All right, let me recognize Planning Director Michael Clark. He has an employee introduction that he would like to share with you.
It's kind of hard to follow up on it. I think we should discuss the order of the schedule next time. It's been said that one of the most formative aspects of a person's life is their first job out of college. Well, we're fortunate that we found definitely a diamond when we put out a search, a nationwide search for our new Planner 1 position. As you recall, Aaron Chalker, who was in the position of Planner 1, was recently promoted, and that left a vacancy within the department. We put out a search not only local, but we sent it out to the majority of the universities on the East Coast, as well as the Midwest, searching for somebody with experience or programming degree, something related to the planning and development field. We were fortunate to find Kate,
Farrell.
thank you. It's been a long evening. Kate Farrell, who just recently graduated from Bryn Mawr, which is a private university just outside of Philadelphia, with a degree in growth and structure of cities, which is a planning-related major. We've already discovered that she has a knack for plan review, as well as ordinance reading. And fortunately for us, while she went to school in Philadelphia, she's actually from the Triangle, raised in Cary, and her mom even worked for the city of Raleigh for many years, so she's familiar with the commitment that public service comes to play. So we're very fortunate to welcome Kate Farrell as our new Planner 1. Okay.
Hello, thank you guys so much. I'm very excited to be working for the town of Zebulon and working with the wonderful staff that exists here, as well as working with the commissioners and the board. And I'm very excited just to serve the town of Zebulon and to work closely with all of you. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Welcome aboard.
Yes, she's joined us at a time where we are the second fastest growing town in the state. All right, and to conclude the manager's report, I'm going to recognize Bobby Fitz to share some budget transfers, and when he concludes, that concludes the manager's report for this meeting.
All right, I'll see how fast I can read these, but that's what I just handed out to y'all just a minute ago. Just some budget transfers to report. And governing board moved $3,800 from elections, $3,800 from elections to travel and training, moved $1,500 from group insurance to $1,000 of that to FICA and $500 to materials and supplies. Moved $170 from Campo, $15 of that to Triangle J, and $155 to the NCLM dues. And finance moved $5,000 to retiree insurance, $1,500 of that from group insurance, $1,300 from retirement, $900 from unemployment compensation, and $1,300 from travel and training. Moved $3,000 to contract services, Wake County tax collection, $2,000 of that from professional services, and $1,000 from contract services. And administration moved $1,000 to travel and training from print and copying, moved $500 to advertising from cell phones. And planning moved $850 from minimum housing, $300 of that to vehicle maintenance, and $550 of that to enterprise lease vehicles. And police moved $5,000 to part-time salaries, $4,000 of that from insurance and bonds, and $1,000 from group insurance. And fire moved $5,000 from insurance and bonds to vehicle maintenance. In property and project management division of Public Works, moved $5,000 to Water and Sewer Stadium, $700 of that. Moved $5,000 to Water and Sewer Stadium, $700 of that from ZMC maintenance, $1,100 from stadium maintenance, $2,200 from LED lighting conversion, and $1,000 from janitorial supplies. Moved $1,600 from ZMC maintenance to ZMC Water and Sewer. Moved $1,500 from LED lighting conversion to equipment maintenance. Moved $5,000 to salaries from salaries in the operation division. Moved $2,000 to retirement from retirement in operations division. Moved $2,500 from group insurance in operations division. In operations division, moved $5,000 from insurance and bonds to fuel, and moved $60 from materials and supplies, streets, to the community recycling day. And finally, in parks and recreation, moved $2,400 from special events, $1,400 of that to police overtime salaries, and $1,000 to parks and rec overtime salaries. Moved $4,600 from insurance and bonds, $700 to part-time athletics, $400 to equipment maintenance, $3,500 to grounds maintenance. Moved $3,100 to fuel, $2,400 from cemetery, landscaping, $700 from community center programs. Thank you.
Questions?
Comments? Thank you, Bobby. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Jeff?
I second it.
Second? All in favor? Meeting adjourned.
$58,300 they missed. And that's just the recommended budget. I'm probably gonna go get on the train. The CIP.
For sure.